Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. I'm so glad you all can join us today. I hope you're regulars and that you join every week. But if you're new, welcome, welcome as well. Today you're going to meet Peter Cobb. So Peter's had this really full and varied life. I mean, in the mental health space, the disability space, he worked as a reporter, he worked as a lobbyist, which is very interesting. Now he spends his time, according to Peter, he spends his time outdoors, hiking, skiing, and kayaking, and of course, reading and writing. I do want to know if he does that outside too. Perhaps only inside. We'll find out. Welcome, welcome, Peter.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. So you are, you've had this very varied professional life. How did you get into writing? What's that journey like? How did you get started?
Well, if you take my first professional writing, in the 1970s, for 5 years, I was a reporter for two small newspapers in Vermont. And I got to tell you, being a reporter is a great laboratory to learn how to write. Think
Mm,
about it. You get a complicated story, and they say, listen, you got 600 words. That's it. So as a reporter, you have to, or maybe 700, doesn't matter, not very many. So as a reporter, you have to learn what goes in, what doesn't go in. And so that
hmm
kind of set me up in a course of writing. I left the reporting after 5 years and I went into a variety of jobs, the longest of which I worked for the visiting nurses in Vermont. I was their trade association director. I did
hmm
writing there too, but not fiction. I did the kind of writing you do when you run a trade association. You're reading boring laws and then summarizing from your members, that kind of thing. As far as fiction goes, I really started with COVID. Um, I didn't, COVID was a strange thing for all of us. We're sort of everything we were doing before, we could, most of it anyway, we could not do. Before COVID, I was a driver for blind people and bringing them to doctor's appointments and shopping and all that kind of stuff. Well, that ended. And I also was a teacher on the adult degree programming. That ended too. So now it's 1980, or well, I'm sorry, 1980, 2020, and what am I going to do? So the first thing I did actually was go out and take pictures. Every morning I'd go for a walk and I would take pictures of my neighborhood and so on and so forth.
mm
And then my wife uh, she suggested I was hanging around too close to her. She kind of compared me to a puppy. Every time she stopped, I'd bump into her. So she said, "Why don't you go and write something?" So basically, my first novel was sort of COVID inspired, and also inspired by my work at the visiting nurses. Um, and I actually started a little bit before COVID, maybe 6 or 7 months before COVID, and then COVID really pushed it along fast with sitting. I had a lot of time to sit and to write. And as far as wanting to write, I actually had tried to write earlier when I was working with children. I found that for me, it was impossible. The life with children just didn't leave enough time for me anyway, to write. So I resumed writing in COVID. I finished my first novel just when COVID was starting. And then my second novel I finished 2 years after that.
Wow. Yeah, COVID changed a lot of things for us, didn't it? That's when I started this podcast because writers couldn't go and meet with readers. And so I thought, well, what if I start introducing authors to readers through a podcast? And so it's 4 years old, and I just about almost 4 years old. And that's what I did just because, there was no place to have a book talk. It
Yeah.
was,
Well, COVID
yeah.
changed our lives. We didn't know it at the time.
Yeah, this is the one good thing that came. This is one of the good things that came out of it, though, is Zoom. It's a good thing. So, so now you have, so we're here today to really talk about your latest novel. Some things aren't meant to be. And it's described on your website. I love this. Peter takes readers on an emotional journey through love, faith, and the moral dilemmas that challenge our deepest convictions. So tell us a little bit about this book. Tell us the premise and the setting and the time period.
Well, first off, I should tell you, I didn't write that. That's from Kirkus Reviews. So that was a review um, of the book. What the book is an examination of a man's trying to find himself. But that's not what the book started out to be. When I sat down to write the book, I was fully intended to write a coming of age story based on four or five, 12, 13-year-old boys who were kind of pains in the butts. And that would have been pretty much based on my friends and me, driving the teachers crazy, driving the priests crazy. But after I finished the first chapter, which I had in my head, it only took me almost as much time to write it as I did to type it, because I put it in my head over and over and over, and I finally got it. But then I read the first chapter, and I'm not the kind of person who outlines a book. One chapter follows the next. That's the way I write. So I read the first chapter over, and I said, this kid's okay, but I like the priest. So why did he get here? And then I started asking myself, am I going to write about a priest? What am I going to write about? And I decided that I want to write about his journey to there, his journey to faith. And so what I thought of is, see, now this is 1961, and I backed it up and came up with a good time frame of 1928. And I had him working on a farm in Vermont. Uh, he's a rich kid from Connecticut, hiding out from his family. He's just trying to get away from them. So he comes up to rural Vermont, and Vermont's rural as it is, but in 1920, it was really rural. Um, so he is up here hiding, and he does a lot of mistakes as a farmhand. And the biggest mistake he does is he falls in love with the farmer's wife. And I can tell you, I'm not surprising anybody who's listening who hasn't read the book, is we meet him as a priest right in the first chapter. So we know that his love is not going to make it. But we understand, but we learn why. Why not? And then he made another mistake. He ended up falling in love with her sister. So he kind of compounded his mistakes over and over. And then in the 1930s, for a variety of reasons, he goes back, he's working with his father in a construction company, and he spends most of his time laying off people. Week after week, month after month, he's laying off one man and another man, and just eats them alive. And he decides he wants to become a Catholic priest. As a Catholic priest, or at least his thinking is, if I become a Catholic priest, I can save the world. But what he found out in the job is it's a job. You've got some annoying people you work with, some good people you work with. You got to worry about keeping the church clean, having some. You got to worry about dealing with the altar boys, some of whom are kind of difficult. So he he thinks when he thinks he's going to take the job, he's got this grand plan that he'll save the world. But when he finds out he's got a job that he has to tend to, and he also spends a lot of time wondering, why am I doing this? Does God exist? I mean, why do bad things happen to good people? And when I wrote that section, that was sort of the theme of that part. The theme of the first 60% of the book deals with his life on the farm. And the theme there was sometimes love isn't enough. You may love someone, that person may love you, but it's not enough. The theme of his life as a priest is, why do bad things happen to good people? How do we deal with that? And what I tried really hard to be was not heavy-handed. I didn't want it to be a boring sermon, or an or something about. So I wanted it to be something fairly clear and readable. So we spend his priest years as he deals with the minutia of the job, and he also deals with his own failing faith. But what he discovers his best friend is a bishop, and the bishop also has those thoughts. So they realize that they're not alone. Even as priests, they sometimes question God.
Yep.
That's where
Yes.
the book came from. It didn't come from what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a coming of age book, but sometimes things
So what
happen.
happened to those bad
They're in
boys
the
that
book.
you?
I kept that thread
Oh,
too. Oh, there's a
good. So
There's
those boys are
there's
in
the
there.
1920s thread, which is about 60% of the book, and then there's the 1920s thread, which is about 60% of the book, and what did I say? Yeah, and the 1960s thread, which deals with those boys. In fact, the priest has to keep dealing with them. For example, he catches them stealing wine. And I don't know if you grew up a Catholic, but if you were a Catholic altar boy, one of the things you did is you snuck into the church and you stole wine. I mean, it's just the way it was. It was sort of a rite of passage. And then, of course, the priest has to confront these boys and say, "What, boys, why'd you do that?" And then there's this tunnel that goes from the school to from the school to the church, and there's this tunnel, and it's a rite of passage for these boys to crawl through it. It's about 60 yards long, and it's totally dark, and the boys do that, and they get stuck, and the priest has to come and save them. So the priest spends a lot of time dealing with his boys, but one thing he does, one of the main boy of the group, and the boys call themselves the Five Musketeers. The priest recognizes that this kid can write. He's a slacker of a student. He does a lot of stupid things, but one thing he can do is write. So this priest takes him under his wing and he teaches him how to write.
Nice. Well, you don't want to tell us the whole story though. We want to
No,
read it.
believe me, you haven't, there's
Barely
plenty,
touched it, huh?
plenty,
There's
yeah,
so much going on. All right, that sounds really good. So our priest is our farmer turned priest is your main character.
correct.
What do you really like about him?
What I like about him is he isn't sure of himself. He
Hmm.
questions everything. He wonders why he's doing it. He also treats people well. And he also understands injustice. He's living through the depression. His father runs a construction company, and at one point he lays off a man, and then he meets him later, and the man is now penniless, and he feels terrible. But his father reminds him that wasn't your fault. We had no choice. But he internalizes it. He internalizes other people's suffering, and I like that about him.
Yeah, yeah. He really has empathy. He cares. I like that too. Um, does he change over time? Does
Yeah, I
he
think
nurture
yeah.
that empathy or like how does he grow or change?
Well, he realizes that he can't stay on the farm. He can't be in love with the farmer's wife and stay there. So he has to leave, and he leaves and he goes and he spends a lot of time questioning why he is a priest, but he realizes that was the right decision for him. And he does try
Oh,
to help people. For example, he sets up a homeless breakfast at the church, even though his parishioners don't want him to do it. In the beginning, they do, but then when all the homeless people hang around the church, they kind of want them to go away. And he tells them
mm,
that's not what Christ would want. He wants us to feed them.
yes, he does. Yes, he does. That's what God expects of us. Yeah. So what's next for you? What are you working on now?
Well, I'm not actually sure. I've got a couple of things I'm working on, but I'm not sure if they'll ever see the light of day because I don't know how good they are. I finished a book last summer of 24, about uh, how adults are screwing up sports, turning children's sports into, or kids' sports into a profession where you have travel teams and the costs for that and the cost for tuition and all that kind of stuff. And I like the theme a lot, but the book's not very good. I I
Yet.
I'm gonna yet. I've sat on it. I read it several months later and thinking there's not enough about the girls. There's a girls soccer team, and I comes from my experience. I coached 25 years. I coached junior high,
Mm,
middle school level girls. Um, Too much from the coach, not enough from the players. So I'm going to rewrite it with more of an emphasis on the kids. But it's not something I would think any publisher would want at this point. I'm also
sweet.
almost finished a book just about a marriage. I'm I just was writing this morning and I hit the 70,000 word marker, and I'm guessing about 78,000. Now that one is about a flawed couple and their marriage. And I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm not even sure how I'm going to end it yet, even though I'm only 4 chapters from the end. But um, that's one again. I don't know. My experience, and I don't know about anybody else in your audience who are writers, but after you finish something, put it aside, come back to it 3 or 4 months later, and then read it. Because at first you think it's you might think it's really good, and then you read it and think, oops, a lot of plot holes here, a lot of things I forgot. And also use beta readers because
Yeah, that's what I was
they
just going to say.
yeah, they
Beta
can
readers are so good.
well, they also find out they find flaws that you didn't even see. And then one of the
Exactly.
reasons I had the sports novel, I had three or four people read it, and all of them, and they were all women, said to me, I wouldn't let that guy coach my kids. He's too much of a slob. So I have to clean up his act. He's kind of a little bit too casual. So I'm going to have to make him less casual.
All right. That's right. You have to listen to your beta read, especially if everybody agrees. If you have an outlier, but if everybody said,
No, everybody, all
hmm,
the people who read it said, that guy's not likable enough to be the main character in a book.
so you got to work on that. That sounds good. So as you think about your writing style, you told us that your writing process is you do a chapter after a chapter. That's how I write too. I was speaking to a wonderful author right before speaking with you, and she plots everything out. She writes an outline, and she was saying why that's so important to do. And I said, we're all different, right? We all have a different approach to
Well, I'm a
doing
little
it.
envious of that, I think, because it seems like the right thing to do, but
It
I just don't do
does.
it. In fact, the first book, I wrote the first chapter and the last chapter, and then I did everything in between. For the second, but then that book is called To Alice. It's about a home care worker. The second book, which we're talking about today, I wrote the first chapter, as I told you. I had no idea where I was going. In fact, I didn't know the ending till around the whole book is about 72,000 words, 73. I didn't know the ending till about 65,000. I had no idea how I was going to end it. And every chapter, like the reader, every chapter was a surprise to me. It's like, whoa, that's a surprise. So I think I envy people who outline and follow the outline, but that just isn't what I do.
It isn't me either. My audience has heard me tell this story before, but my last book, Justice for Emerson, my husband was reading it along with me. As I was writing, he was, giving me feedback and stuff. And it was like three-quarters of the way through, and he said, "Karen, you're doing such a good job because I can't figure out who the murderer is." And I said, "I don't know either." So he's going to tell me. I know he's going to reveal himself, but I have no idea. So I'm with you. Chapter by chapter, let your characters lead you. So as you think about your writing approach, your writing style, the things you like to write about, is there an author in your life
Well,
that
I was
that
thinking
had a
about that
big
when
impact?
yeah, when I was thinking about that when you sent that question. If taking people who are writing now, probably my favorite author is Richard Russo. I like his style. I like the fact that he's
Say his name again. I'm sorry.
Richard Russo.
Mhm.
I like him a lot. I think he's uh, to the point. He doesn't beat around the bush. What you see is what you get. So he's probably my favorite writer now. I also like Ann Tyler. I don't know if you've ever read what's it Back When We Were Grown-Ups, but that's just a really good book. Um,
Mm.
and there's a woman from my hometown, Mary McGarry Morris, and I don't know if you she had a book called Songs of Ordinary Time. I think it was an Oprah pick. Uh,
Mm.
I like her book for a couple of reasons. She and I write from the same place. My my town in my book is called Providence, Vermont, but it's really kind of Rutland, Vermont, where I grew up. And her book is also based in Rutland, where she grew up. She's a little older than I am. She's about 10 years older than I am. So her books kind of let me know, you're from a small town, but you can do it if you want to. Um, I also, the strange, I was trying to think about what is the book that influenced me the most. Believe it or not, this is what influenced me most with those Curious George books. Remember the little monkey? Well,
Yes.
Curious George couldn't help it. He spilled the milk at dinner. He ruined the man in the yellow suit's tools. My father was a carpenter. He was to shut me up sometimes. He would give me a tool, nothing powerful, but like a ruler, and I would inevitably break it. I didn't mean to because I was seven,
Mm.
but I would break it. So when I finally discovered Curious George, I identified with him, is a decent enough little guy who just couldn't help but break stuff. So that was probably influenced me more than anything else. In
I
high
love
school,
that. I've read
Well,
those books
it's
to
the way it
my
is.
children and my grandchildren. I love that. I think you're the first person who has said that to Curious George. I haven't heard that one before in 4 years of the show. I like that a lot. So this has been lovely, and I know that people are very interested in you. They would like to learn more about you. They'd like to find your books. They'd like to find you on the internet. So how can they find you?
Well, I
How
have a
can they
web
be in
page.
touch?
I have a web page. Sorry, interrupting. I have a web page, just myname.com, either jpetercobb.com or petercobb.com. You can learn my books. You can read the first 2 or 3 chapters of each book if you want to figure out my style. You might like it, you might not like it. So that's on each thing. I also have an Instagram page because I do also do pictures, Vermont pictures, and that's also, I think, Peter Cobb at Instagram. I'm not sure. As far as purchasing the book, it's in Vermont stores, probably not outside of Vermont. So if your folks are outside of Vermont, you can go to your store and have them order it for you. That to me is the better option than going to Amazon, and I'll tell you why. One, and Amazon doesn't treat writers as well as bookstores do. The royalties are much less. Two, I think it's important to support your local store. But if that doesn't work, you can go to Amazon and the book is there. J. Peter Cobb. You can't, if you type to Alice, or sometimes you might not get it, but if you persistent, you can get it. It is, both books are available on that format also.
Yeah.
And
And
obviously,
please go to your local library. Your local library also can purchase the book if you tell them that you want a copy of it, and it might get him to
true.
look at other books by Peter. So your local library is another really good source. Support your independent schools, support public libraries, and support authors. We need your help. Thank
Good
you,
advice.
Peter. This has been so lovely. It's been great speaking with you. And thank all of you for watching and listening. I hope that you are also following me, Karen E. Osborne, author, on Facebook and YouTube and my website. And the first time you get in touch with Peter, or if you know him already, the next time, please tell him that you met him. And what are you reading? What are you writing? Till next week, everybody. Take care.